Good evening. I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting for Wednesday, April 11th, 2018 to order. Can we have a roll call, please, Mr. Alexandrovich?
Yes. Mrs. Witkowski.
Here.
Mr. Gamble.
Here.
Mr. Nielsen.
Here.
Mrs. Evans.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mrs. Larson is excused, and I am here.
Thank you. And the meeting has been properly posted. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the agenda, moving item 5, Countrydale Elementary School presentation, ahead of item 4, community comment. Do I hear that motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Nielsen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Then we will now move on to item 5, the Countrydale Elementary School presentation.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Super excited to be here. Just get plugged in. We just have a few slides to share, but we have more things to verbally share, I suppose. All right. Oh. That's why we brought him, man. All right, we'll start by just doing a few introductions. I'm Shauna LaPlante. I am the principal at Countrydale.
I am Patricia Sneed. I am a 5th grade teacher at Countrydale. And this is my wonderful student who actually joins us. So please stand up.
Thank you, Lily.
I'm Jackie Morrow. I'm a cross-categorical teacher. Wow, if you could get that out. At Countrydale.
I'm Brandon Buckman, 6th grade math and science teacher at Countrydale.
All right, well, today we're going to talk to you a little bit about Countrydale's first ever Kindness Week. This was something that we had just a couple weeks before our spring break, and we wanted to come and share some of our experiences with the board and, of course, our community as well. It was very, very successful. So I'm going to start by just telling you a little bit about basically what inspired us to have a Kindness Week at our school. Of course, there have been a lot of different current events happening all over the world that our students are talking a lot about, and teachers and parents and community members talk about these current events. So of course, it trickles down into our classrooms. So we felt that it was really our duty to do something about that and to have these deep discussions. We, of course, do have some students and parents who report bullying type behavior and other maybe negative behavior, and we've also felt that that was our duty to do something about that, and we wanted to be proactive. I connected with Catherine Reed, one of our system specialists in our district, and she gave me the idea and mentioned that our high school had done their own Kindness Week, and I immediately said, that is fantastic, and we both agreed that you cannot argue with kindness and being kind to one another. So that's when I started just putting some ideas out to my staff and asked teachers. I said, hey, we're going to have a Kindness Week. I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like yet, but I was super confident that we could come up with something really, really great, and we did. And really, more than anything else, I have students and staff who just want to do more to encourage kindness in our building. So that's kind of where this idea came from, and we just started to run with it a little bit. Another piece that we looked at and thought about, this is just a little piece of it, but I think it's important to share, is that we looked at our Gallup student poll, and that is something that we give to all of our 5th and 6th grade students, and it measures engagement and belief and value and things like that. And Countrydale has had some really strong positive results from Gallup's poll. One piece of that is that it shows 74% of our students who took the survey indicated that they truly do feel engaged at school, and basically stating that many of our students report that they feel safe and they have fun when they're at our school. That's really important to us, and those are things that we're really, really proud of. And we also felt as a staff, as a community, that it's our job to make sure that we're keeping that encouragement, that engagement, the feeling of belief. We need to keep that alive. So that was another big piece of where our kindness week kind of all played out. So once we started to meet as a team, these teachers here were part of that committee who started our kindness week. We started to talk about, of course, like, well, what is this going to look like? What does this mean? And we had to really come up with a vision, and we needed that to tie into our school, into our district, into Franklin, and what we really wanted to sort of bring to life with our kindness week. So we came up with a vision, and this was something that I talked to students about that. I read this over the announcements every day that week, and teachers had discussions about this in our school. I'll read it to you because we feel, again, this was something that was really important to us with our kindness week. And at Countrydale, we believe that Countrydale is a school where all students and staff are valued as special and unique individuals. We believe that it's important to teach positive behaviors, increase student engagement, and build character. And we do this by talking and learning about the importance and power of kindness. So this is what we kept coming back to throughout the week, throughout our kindness week. And again, this was our first ever. We still have some different things. Of course, we're not quite sure where to go next, just because we needed to start somewhere. So we will be coming back to this sort of ongoing. So I'm going to pass it off here.
So during the week, we had a different theme each day that we liked to focus on. So not only just spreading kindness and random acts of kindness, but we also wanted to touch on the themes of anti-bullying, cultural diversity, and sensitivity. So during the week, we had students and staff wear certain colors to support each theme or big idea. So for example, on Monday, our big idea was just all about kindness. So we had everybody wear yellow to kind of brighten up our school and spread kindness. On Tuesday, our big theme was around cultural diversity and sensitivity. So we had everybody wear orange, which is the color for cultural diversity. And then on Wednesday, our theme was anti-bullying. So we had everybody wear blue. We also gave everybody a smiley face sticker, like the one still on my back. And the challenge was to make somebody smile that day. On Thursday, it was just kind of our culminating day, so we had everybody wear school spirit wear for our last assembly. So I'll kind of go through what we planned so far, like activities for each day. Each day we had something for students and staff to participate in to really, discuss kindness, what that means, and talk about all the different themes. So on Monday, when the students came into the classroom, they received a purple sheet of paper. And the idea was that they would write out at least 4 different random acts of kindness to do throughout the week by Thursday. So I know in like the upper grade levels, when they did this, some of the classrooms had each student fill out 1 slip per day and kind of set that as a goal for themselves to do or perform that random act of kindness. And at the end of the day, they had a quick discussion with their students about if they met that goal, how they felt when they performed that random act of kindness, and how the student reacted when they received the random act of kindness. On Tuesday, our theme was cultural diversity and sensitivity. So our first activity was where we took the kindergarten through 3rd grade classrooms and buddied them, or like paired them with a 4th through 6th grade classroom. So there was some age difference. And we had them watch a reading of A Bad Case of Stripes. And it was very interesting to hear the discussion that happened afterwards of that video, where the students were actually able to take what was happening in the story and how the kids react and apply it to what happens every day at Countrydale and with our differences and how we can react to those. So if you're not familiar, A A Bad Case of Strikes is about a girl who ends up either looking different or acting different than others at certain points of the week or the day, and how her peers kind of reacted to her. So it was very cool hearing like what the younger kids and the older kids together were talking about, and how if they saw somebody teasing somebody just for being different, what they could do or what they could or how they could react differently. So I think having like the younger kids and the older kids with a role model was very, very cool. Also on that day, we gave everybody a large puzzle piece, as you can see in the picture. And all this, so each classroom got one. We also gave one to the office, for the office staff, the kitchen staff, the custodial staff, specialists, support staff, I think that's everybody. And they all signed their names. So then at the end of the day, there was a couple teachers who went and put them all together into a puzzle. So then on Wednesday morning when the kids walked in, they were able to like find their name and realize that they're one piece of our whole community, our whole family at Countrydale, and that without that piece, we're not a whole. So I thought that was really, really powerful for the kids to see. On Wednesday, our theme was anti-bullying, so we had the younger grade levels do a little bit different activity than the older grade levels. So Lily will talk about what they did for the older grade levels, but the younger grade levels did an activity. You can see the picture of the wrinkled heart. So they, in their classroom, they had a discussion about how words can be very hurtful and very powerful, and every time there's a like a mean word or a mean phrase said, they would crinkle part of the heart, and then after, you know, they've talked about like what they've heard before or what somebody has said to them before, their hearts all ended up super wrinkled, and how you can't flatten that back out. Like just like you can't take those words back, you can't, you know, undo that. So it was very cool for the kids to see how visual that was and how that really impacts everybody when you say hurtful things. So now I'll turn it over to Lily to talk about what the upper grades did.
In 5th and 6th grade, we did a bookmark where we had our name and our picture on it, and we passed it around the classroom to everybody, and they would each put something kind that they thought about you on it. And eventually, once everybody got it back, we got to see what everybody said about it. One of mine is somebody said, like, you're a very nice and kind friend. And so then I think that helped, and it really, like, well, not everybody knows what everybody thinks of them, so when somebody put it down, they really knew what others thought of them. And on that same day, we watched a video about, like, anti-bullying, and so then our class had a discussion about that, and then we went on to this activity.
How did that bookmark make you feel when you got it back?
It was good because it made me feel better because of all the nice things they said.
So, for the Ronald McDonald House, the charities, being the older grades, I wanted to be able to go a little bit beyond just what we're doing in our school. And so, I had a discussion with the students, and I really wasn't exactly sure what direction I wanted to go with this, but I had a talk with both of my classes that I have, and I said, you know, what are your thoughts, and you know, what are some places you want to maybe go to? Some were saying, you know, Ronald McDonald, some of them had talked about Children's Hospital, some of them had talked about, you know, maybe the Humane Society, something like that. And so we did narrow it down because I said, have all of you experienced being at Children's Hospital? Because either you've been there or you know somebody who has been there, and so they all had. And so when I went online, I'll admit, Ronald McDonald House had a really nice list of stuff that I could get for them. And I didn't find quite as a nice list like that for Children's Hospital, so I would recommend that they actually have that in the future, because then I would have picked them. But they had a great list of things that we could get for them. I also thought that this was a really great tie-in because of the fact that, unfortunately, we do have a number of students at Countrydale that do have children that have cancer. And so I thought that would be a really great tie-in, not necessarily just for them, but it was a neat tie-in to tie in with that community. And every day, my students get the opportunity to either say an announcement on the loudspeaker, which they're all excited about. Lily did a great job when she did hers. Or they actually go to the classroom and they pick up the different items. So Lily, if you want to talk about maybe what your thoughts are about this and how you're feeling about it?
Well, I think it's a really good thing to collect items for because it's also helping kind of keep like parents with children in the hospital because this is like a home for them, so they don't have to like pay for expensive hotel and stuff. And I think it's really nice that the fifth graders are helping out collecting the items for this, and we're actually getting a lot of items to help them. So I think it's really nice that we're doing it.
So we wrapped the Kindness Week with an assembly to celebrate and help everybody kind of visually see all the random acts of kindness together. So we literally linked thousands of random acts of kindness together in the gymnasium for everybody to see. And it was just a powerful experience to see all those great things that the kids did throughout the week. We actually then took those links and hung them up in the hallway, but of course nobody took a picture of that. So we have a picture
Of the pile.
them and Shauna's desk. So,
I'm actually under that pile.
but it just kind of goes to show the strength and the power that our kids do have, and the great things that they can accomplish. Patricia mentioned the quotes that they read over the loudspeaker. The one today was by a mathematician and philosopher named Blaise Pascal, who his famous quote was basically, an act of kindness is such a small thing, but it accomplishes so much.
I'm really impressed you remembered that. That's great.
Blaise Pascal, man. So, we want to continue to spread that throughout the rest of the year, and really thinking about next year, beginning the year with a kindness week, early in the year to kind of set the tone, and encourage our students to take ownership of that kindness and put that in their hands, to really reinforce a culture of empathy and hope in our school. One of the things that our PBIS team is working on right now is focusing on restorative practices. So instead of punitive punishments for violations, focusing more on how students can right that wrong and make it right in both their eyes, but also the person that was harmed. So moving away from punitive punishments to more restorative practices is something that we're really focusing on. We had a former student come to us, and he's getting his Eagle Scout badge and would like to create a buddy bench for Countrydale. So, those are the types of things that that student, that young man is doing, and our fifth grade students are doing, that we're hoping to continue to spread and grow. As educators, we focus a lot on academic excellence, and at Countrydale, we really want to make sure that our kids reach human excellence as well.
And that's our kindness week.
Very good, thanks.
On just a side note, I would just like to remind all of you, if you did not know that, Jeff Lewis actually did go to Countrydale.
It's a long, long time ago.
Oh, come on, it wasn't that long. Don't make me feel so old.
I want to thank you for coming, and as the board knows, I talked about your Kindness Week last meeting, and I was there on the Thursday when you made that chain, and Mrs. Reed was standing next to me, and she was very emotional during that time. It was a very nice presentation, and I also had the pleasure of working with Lily a couple times in Mrs. Sneed's class, so thank you, Lily, for being here tonight, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
So we will move back to item 4, community comment. Is there anyone who would like to make community comment tonight? Any community comment? Hearing none, then we will move on to item 6, consent agenda. Is there any board member that would like to remove the item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
Motion by Mrs. Witkowski, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Gamble. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7 is school board announcements. I'd first like to say that today is Mr. Jeff Lewis's last regular board meeting, and I think the board would like to thank you for your 3 years of service and for everything you've done for the district and the board. So
Thank you.
Thank you. And we hope you'll be present on May 17th for the recognition for the,
Yes, I'll mark the date down.
all right, great.
I didn't have it down, but I'll have to write it down now.
May 17th. And we'll also be welcoming Mr. Claude Lewis at our next board meeting. So, are there any other board announcements?
Musical starts this week. Well, that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday this week.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sunday is sold out.
Nice.
And then the following Friday and Saturday.
Yep.
You won't want to miss it. They've got a spectacular show planned.
Yeah.
And if anyone didn't get to attend any science fairs at any of the elementary schools, Countrydale has theirs this Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. And then you've got an announcement today.
So in the Teaching Today newspaper, we did submit an article regarding the new Forest Park Middle School. I'd like to thank Mr. Cohn for his contributions to that article and Ms. Dade for putting that together on behalf of our district. I think it's really a nice article that represents our community very well. So please take a look at that. Thank you.
All right, then we'll move on to item 8, school board calendar. We have a regular board meeting Wednesday, April 25th, 2018 here at the Education and Community Center at 6 o'clock p.m. and a regular board meeting Wednesday, May 9th, 2018 here at the ECC at 6 o'clock p.m. Item 9 is reports and presentations. We have 9A, the safety report with Dr. Miller and Mr. Cloutier.
Okay, let's all move around the other side. I did get that presentation. Slides. Apologize for having our back to you. Because we're sharing the laptop, I think it will sit here, so I just apologize for that. Okay. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you, kind of in one place, the information that, has been shared to you through my communication with you as a board and through the community. But tonight, we're kind of putting that all together for you in one place. We'll be talking primarily, Mr. Cloutier and I, about the physical safety of our students in our school district. A little later, you'll be hearing a presentation from Ms. Preman, and she'll be talking a bit more about the mental health of our students and safety as it relates to that. So it's a pretty comprehensive look at safety, if you will. So, of course, school safety is our #1 priority. It's truly important to all of us. And again, the purpose of this report is to convey how we've been ensuring safety in our schools. So Board Policy 5460, school safety, really identifies 3 areas of focus. School safety is about protection of staff and students, establishment of a climate conducive to learning for all students, and protection of district property. This is a statement that comes directly from our school board policy. We have, for a long time, had a committee called the Student Health and Safety Committee that has met regularly once a month since I've been in this role as the HR person and superintendent, so 12 years, and prior to that as well. So it's been a very long-standing committee for the district. Each month when the committee would meet, the topics, and we'd go through each one of them each time, were communicable diseases, health and safety trainings, accident and injury exposure, student health issues, indoor air quality, and then the work of the safety advisory. So again, every month we would go through those topics at every agenda and report out. Those meetings included myself as the HR director, Mr. Cloutier, who is our safety officer for our school district, and our school nurses. That expanded to a larger safety committee this fall. And that larger safety committee has a much larger group of people involved in discussing school safety. So on that committee, we have administrators, district and building level principals. The recreation department is represented. Our athletics and activities director is there. IT is there. Luann is there. Luann Zielinski. Buildings and grounds is represented by Mr. Cloutier and Mr. Stumble. We have school psychologists, nurses, the police department, and the fire department are all a part of the safety committee that was put together this fall. And the focus of the safety committee in the beginning, as we began to meet, was really just to ensure that our crisis response guidelines were very up to date. But of course, as the year evolved and things occurred, we're talking about some very specific safety measures in addition to just talking about those crisis guidelines that we've had in place for a number of years that we continue to update. So I have the word confidentiality listed there because as we present tonight, Mr. Cloutier and I are somewhat limited in what we will share because it's important that procedures that we have in place, some of them are kept confidential to ensure that those outside our community, those that may want to cause harm, don't know what they are. So as we go through the presentation, we cannot share everything that we are doing because if we do, that would be public and therefore could make us more vulnerable. So I just want you to keep that in mind.
So one of the things that we do with all of our volunteers is we do put them through a criminal background check. It has about a 1-week delay, but it does, everyone, we have them sign up every year for it. We have them fill out the form every year so that when they sign in, we know that they're allowed in the building. We know that they're allowed to get past the office without an escort because they've been vetted and we've done a criminal background check. And in that criminal background check, there's a number of items that we look for, which Judy can talk to you about later. Mm-hmm. And we're currently looking at that system to see whether or not it continues to meet our needs or whether or not we should look at something even stronger.
That's for volunteers?
Yes.
Right.
Volunteers.
And do we background check staff annually?
No, we do not. We do not do criminal background checks on our employees annually. No, we do not do that.
When does that occur? At point of hire?
At point of hire and if there's reasonable suspicion. So we've had guidelines for visitors, vendors, and volunteers in place for a number of years. And what that means is that anyone who is a volunteer, wants to be a volunteer, visitor, or vendor, and wants to be in the presence of children in school must submit to a criminal background check. That background check and whether they're allowed to enter into the school building is based on, the criteria is based on someone who may have been arrested for conduct that's of a violent or aggressive nature, someone who has multiple arrests, anyone convicted of a felony, or having a record of an arrest or criminal conduct that's substantially related to creating an unsafe environment for students. So that's the general criteria around whether someone is able to have access at all. So if any of these four do come up, they don't have access. They don't get access to the school at all.
So, some of the drills that we do across the top there, we do fire drills regularly as prescribed, one per month. We do tornado warnings. Now, you may not realize this week is tornado severe weather awareness week. Tomorrow is the state drill. At 1 o'clock, there'll be a mock watch, and at 1:45, I believe it was, there will be a mock warning, tornado warning. So you'll hear those sirens going off in Franklin. Pleasant View in particular will hear it because they have one on their property. It's one of the, there's four in the city, I believe. So we do all of those types of drills. We do emergency response team, medical drills. We do intruder alerts. We do those drills on an ongoing basis. The other piece of this puzzle is that if you'll see down below, and we've just started to put up, this is the revised version of our four. It's really called an options-based response, is what our police department is training us on. And they've found that people need options. Just the old way of just locking down didn't work necessarily. So, for example, we have evacuation guidelines, which is really a fire drill, or could be your run. The hold, for example, something is outside of the district that's happening, or we have a reason to keep children in the classroom, but not necessarily a threat. So you would continue to, under this circumstance, you would continue to teach. A lockdown might be a shelter in place. An example of that is several years back, someone was walking down 51st Street, probably coming home from hunting, had a rifle over his shoulder. We went into a lockdown. The children were never at risk, but it was the right thing to do at the time. Run, hide, fight is really that options-based program. It really is about giving the people the opportunity to run, to hide, or to fight. And there's I believe the next
Slide down.
yeah, a couple of slides will talk more about it.
And in this room, you'll see these response actions posted on this wall and on that wall, and they're posted in every classroom of every building.
We sent them out today. These are the updated ones. We just got them back from the printer. We sent them out today. We've got them up, and they've already, the custodians are already starting to put them up.
We had nearly the same document previously, but what we've added are some examples here. And we do have substitute teachers who enter our buildings, and we provide them this information, but you know, it really is more helpful to them to help them understand the difference between a hold and a lockdown, for example, to have that in this particular document. So this was work of the safety committee to refine this and get this reposted in each of our classrooms.
Each one of these actions, the fire drill, tornado warning, lockdown drill, for example, are mandated by the state to occur, the drills themselves, correct?
The state mandates the fire drill and the tornado, the shelter. There's no specific statute about active shooter drills currently that I'm aware of.
And we've met the fire and tornado warning
Right,
requirement this year already
Absolutely.
for the school year?
Well, no, because fire drill has to happen every month.
Every
so-
month, okay.
Yes, there's 9 a year.
And have we performed any active shooter or lockdown drills in the district this year?
We'll talk a little
Okay.
further about the trainings we've done and where we're headed with that.
All right.
So we do have a very strong partnership with our Franklin Police Department. The Franklin Police Department partners with our school district to put a school resource officer in our high school. The resource officer is fully armed and trained to deal with an active shooter. Our fire department has also been trained in tactical medical response to casualties. This is not necessarily common in communities, but our fire department will go in with the clearance from the police department during the situation to provide medical care. It makes great sense for us to have this partnership with our first responders when something happens, hopefully never. They will be the individuals we call. They'll be the people who show up. They will be most familiar with our procedures and who we are, what we do, and have been very, very helpful to us as partners in ensuring safety.
Yes, and our trainer, Captain Magno, often spoke to the groups about how important that was and how proud he was, because other school districts and first responders don't have that same kind of a relationship, and how important it was to him as the tactical captain for the entire police department and training officer that we had that kind of a relationship with the school district and the police. I thought it was very important and uncommon.
So moving to what kind of trainings occurred, Mr. Lewis, and where we're headed, we'll go there now.
Sure. So again, the safety committee was put into place to enhance all our trainings. And so this is an outline of what the Kevin Magno, as you can see, it was the city of Franklin was Captain Magno, Sergeant Morris, and Sergeant Stowers. They were our trainers. We went 2 rounds with every school, one to do the training and another one to allow for follow-up questions. And we went about, why are they here? We talked about the histories and the trends in active shooter and phenomenon. Indicators and threat leakage. Threat leakage would be, you might find a clue on Facebook, or another student might tell us about something that's going on in a student's life. Review of the school district's shooter critical incident protocols. That's really what we've been talking about throughout the whole thing. What school employees can do to mitigate loss. The run, hide, fight piece is a large part of it. The police and fire joint response that Dr. Miller alluded to, where the way he described it is, in the past, the fire department would always wait until everything was calmed down and over. Now they'll be in what they call a cocoon. He called it a cocoon of policemen. So it's probably about four policemen with the with the fire department in that cocoon, heading out to help the injured. So that's a big difference in the way they used to do things. So we've had that, and one of the biggest things was our watchword, or our mantra with our crisis response used to be common sense prevails. We've changed that to now take practical action. That we're trying to talk about the action piece so that people know that they can act, and we're giving them options on how to act. So this is really the run, hide, fight. This is that options-based piece. And now, previous to this, you would always just hide. That was the lockdown drill. Still has a place in the case of, say, the hunter walking down 51st Street. But really, we wanted to give people options as to what to do in the event of an active shooter. And we've also been training all of our staff that this is not sequential. This is not you run, or you hide, or you fight. This is, you might have to hide. Then maybe you run. You run, and maybe you run into the bad guy, and maybe you have to fight. So part of our training has been that this practical action is very fluid. And we're giving people sort of the resources, the training, to make some good decisions in the event of an active shooter.
So what we've done is we've worked with our staff, and we've also worked with our students. The professionals in the Pupil Services Department worked very hard to come up with 3 different presentations for our students. The one on the upper left-hand corner is a slide from the elementary presentation, provided to children as young as 5 years old. And you can see that there's no practical action for fight included with elementary school children. We talk with them about getting out, and we talk with them about hiding out. We don't talk to them about fighting back. And what's explained to the children is that you stay with your teacher, you follow your teacher. So it's developmentally appropriate for elementary school children. And then on the right side, you'll see a slide from the middle school presentation where we go a little further with thinking independently. We tell the students there to run, and it isn't necessary that they wait for their teacher to run, just run. And then this slide on the bottom here is one from the high school presentation where we got into a lot more information with our older students about what fight means. What does it mean to defend yourself? So these slide presentations were provided to our students, and then students were given an opportunity to interact with teachers about what all of this means. One of the things we also have done is we've solicited feedback from our parents, and you can take a minute here and just read some of the comments from our parents regarding school safety. I'll just pause for a minute so that you can do that. So you'll see that, you know, there's somewhat of a range of things that people believe we should be doing, but you can also see that for the most part, they represent high levels of security that our parents want for their children in our schools. So the safety committee is working through, going through all of these comments and adding to a work list that they work off of at each meeting to discuss, to research, and to determine what we would move forward with. I just wanted to give you a sense of what that communication looked like from the parents. So the work list is critical to what happens with the safety committee. And I'll let Mark explain a little bit about the work list and the functions of the safety committee.
Well, it became quickly apparent that there's a lot of pieces to this, to keeping us secure. Whether it's the social and emotional learning that you're going to hear about soon, or some of the physical things that we do, some of the facility things that we do. So what we've done is we've organized our agendas around these 5 categories with an attached ongoing work list. And so as we get through the logistics portion of the work list, we start to tick those things off on our different agendas. Communication pieces, facility pieces, those are those brick and mortar things that we're doing. Training resources, and then future discussions. So we've organized our work around these 5 categories, and we continue to go through those agendas and continue to take care of all of those, tick off those items as we can complete them. There's a lot of moving pieces, and it's been very helpful to organize it in this fashion.
The safety committee has met 6 times in the last 8 to 9 weeks, so they're meeting very regularly. So how are we now more secure? We've most definitely done a lot more staff training. We've done student training. We've had more lockdown drills in our schools. With regard to future training, we are currently working through what that will look like. There's certainly a continuum of training that involves students, everything from, you know, meeting with students to talk about what to do, to actually having a simulated active shooter in a building. So it's important that we determine developmentally what is the appropriate training for our students. And of course, a lot of planning needs to go into that so that we don't traumatize children, and that we do it safely. You know, telling children to run needs to be carefully planned and organized. So we are working through more training with our students. So some of the other ways we're more secure, if you want to talk about those.
Certainly. Well, again, as I said, we've done the lockdown drills, but we're also we've numbered all the exits to the building. Now, many of them were numbered. Now we've made sure that we've gone over that again, especially at the high school, for example. We had some new entrances that we numbered. We've numbered them inside and out, so that if I'm in the hallway, I can tell 911, I'm standing by door number blah, blah, blah. And the good guys can see what the door numbers are from the outside. We're this summer, we plan to put the classroom numbers in the windows, again, so the good guys can see it from the outside, and they know what they're looking at, and because they'll have a room map. In fact, our head custodian at Forest Park is so organized that he's already numbered the new building, at least the exits, numbered the exits. The room numbers are there. I mean, by that, I mean he's done the map. So we have the plan, it's just a matter of now implementing it when we open up the building. We also, well, we gathered that parent input. We had a staff Q&A document that we're working on because we've had a number of repeat questions from the staff that we want to give them the kind of information that they need. The Homeland Security checklists, each principal has completed those. We have a subcommittee of the wider safety committee looking at those, looking for common themes. And we'll discuss those at a future safety committee meeting. We're implementing a keypad entry, a PIN code entry for kids clubs. It's much like what our daycares have in the area, you know, the commercial daycares have, where you'll have an individual PIN number, and in order to get past that door, you'll have to hit that number, then the door releases and you can go in and get your child. And we're looking at securing all the school offices in the method of Pleasant View. Pleasant View and Forest Park, the offices are not directly on the vestibule. So we've implemented this years ago, where I push that button. As you can see, it has a camera. It has an option for me to speak to the secretary in the office. And then once vetted, she can let them in. We'll be implementing something like that at all of our elementaries. And we're working on the other schools to do the right thing for those schools and to secure all our offices. It's a pretty small, fine line as to what we're trying to get at, because we want to maintain, we want to be a school, but we want to be secure. We want to be customer friendly, but we want to be safe. So we're looking for ways that we can do that and make it work for the people who have to work it, the office staff, the people who come to our door, so that you can still come and have lunch with your child. Now, you may not be able to just come in today and do that. You might have to get your background checked. But we want to make it sure that the parents can still come in and do those kinds of things with their children. So it is an ongoing process to get this just right.
With regard to the keypad for Kids Club, that code expires at a certain time during the day. So you may only use that code in a time frame in the morning when you'd be dropping off your student, and then that lock would no longer work or respond to that code after that time period. And then it's available again at the end of the day. I just want to be clear that we're not just giving key codes to people to get in at any time. And then with regarding the secure offices, we're working very carefully through what are those protocols. And again, I want to maintain some of the confidentiality around this, but we will train our staff on what to look for, what to say, what to ask for, to ensure that they're not just letting people into our schools. Mm-hmm.
Regarding the Kids Club keypads,
Mm-hmm.
what is end of day, so that if you have sports going on at night, how are you going to deal with that? Or PTO meetings that are early, things like that?
Well, what we started to look at is that our secure day ends when Kids Club is over. So we are likely to, we're still working out the details of that, but if you're a coach, you've been vetted. You're allowed to be in there with our students. You might get a PIN code that's active for your season. If you're some of the recreation department programs that we have a Spanish club, we have mad scientists, we have a couple of, mad science I should say, we have a couple of those types of, we have some yoga programs. They have an instructor who's already been vetted and already allowed in our building. So we can give that instructor a PIN code that allows them into the building for their class 6 weeks or whatever that time frame is. So that's how we see handling that. Some of the things, we may be pushing some of those events into the after 6 o'clock time frame so that it's after Kids Club is over.
Okay, and I have one other question for the slide further back for the younger children where you had get out, hide out. What have you told them? Are there any children in here? Worst case scenario, if the teacher is not present, then what?
Find a safe person, run away. Julie, did you want to add to that? You were more involved with the...
Yeah, the school psychologist did the protocols and the training for the students. I can't foresee a time during the day when an adult would not be present with a young child. They would be supervised throughout the course of the day. So the information for students was really, you listen to the adult or to the teacher. And I think the word that was used in it was trusted adult, because they needed to be careful around
I'm
that.
saying worst case scenario, the teacher's gone.
Yeah.
Worst case
Our
scenario.
child could be in the bathroom, but a fire drill could occur at that time as well, so.
Well, I mean,
Incapacitated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, we can inquire further as to how that was discussed, because the psychologist, there are so many scenarios. I'm sure it did come up at the schools, and we can make sure that everybody's clear about that, because that's important. That's really important. This is the last slide. This is language from your policy as a board. You believe that students and staff have the unqualified right to attend schools which are safe, secure, and peaceful. And, school safety is something we have to always focus on. We'll never be done. We'll never be able to say, yep, we're secure. We have to always be listening and learning and doing what we can to make school as safe as it could possibly be. One of the things we're really wanting to focus on next year with our staff is situational awareness, really having them become more aware of the situations they're in and noticing things and what to look for, not just how to respond if something happens, but before something happens. So,
It's about keeping safety top of mind
right.
for the teachers. And that's always the challenge with safety, because quite honestly, a lot of people don't want to think about it. So it's about ways, we're researching ways to keep it top of mind to our whole, and developing that safety, that culture of safety.
Right, and along those lines, promoting a see something, say something culture. We're investigating a tip line, speak up tip line for students, for staff, for people to convey their concerns. And we really need to be pretty aggressive about telling people, if you see something, say something. So those are the things that we're currently working on, and we have a safety committee meeting tomorrow. Thank you. Anything else?
Yeah, the first, regarding the tailoring of the message for the different buildings, I think it's smart. It shows you thought through some of those discussions. But if we look specifically at what the safety committee is discussing, are we talking about alternative methods of locking doors via door jam locks, master locking devices, there's a school in southwestern US that was highlighted on NBC News that gave a bucket of 30 rocks to each classroom and said it as a last resort, 30 rocks being thrown at someone with a gun might disorient enough to fight. Are we thinking out of the box as some of these solutions? Are we considering them? I mean, I understand that this should be an agenda item, but at least confirm for me that it is.
Yes, it is. And we have that plan and strategy in place.
Okay. Secondly, I guess going back to the trainings that were provided, in previous years, what was the procedure of having lockdown drills in each building?
So annually, each school would have to have at least one lockdown drill.
Okay, and that's the same policy this year and moving forward?
No, we've had more, and we will have more.
Okay, so in each building, a lockdown drill has occurred for this
Yes.
school year?
To date now,
To
yes.
date? Okay. And then finally, I guess, this is more of a statement, because I think it's a miss on the district's part. But why are we treating volunteers that enter our school annually different than a teacher that enters the school annually in terms of background checks?
One is an employee and one is not. And, I'm not sure if Ally would like to convey anything from an HR perspective, but I'm not sure in an employment setting that employers do check employees' backgrounds annually.
My
Do
statement,
they
I
do
guess,
that
is more specific to dealing with kids, and specifically dealing with kids. That in this environment, if we're going to ensure that all volunteers are checked, and our teachers are on annual contracts, that we ensure that whether or not it's annual, every 2 years on a rolling basis, I think it's a miss on the district's part to not, and there are services out there that are fairly reasonable, but to not do those checks on a more frequent basis, other than date of hire, when someone could be in the district for 20 years and have no other background check when they're dealing with kids, is quite concerning.
Now, there are reporting requirements in employee handbook, though, if they were
Right.
to.
By law. For certain convictions by law, staff.
If those are known by the district, right?
No, they're required
They're
to report.
obligated to report, but what you're
And
asking
has
is
has
fair.
anyone, has anyone reported something like that without,
Self-reported, yes.
self-reported?
Self-reported arrest, absolutely.
But I mean, I understand what you're asking, and you are correct in that where we are today makes what you're asking from a process standpoint lesser of an administrative burden than had you asked the same question 5 years ago.
Right. And like I said, it's a statement more than anything else, but I think it's a miss that can be addressed fairly easily. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item 9B, Pupil Services Report, Mrs. Friedman. You gotta put this on the side.
Yes. I'd like to begin by, first of all, thanking the board for the opportunity to speak with you this evening, and also to thank Dr. Miller. We've been talking about student safety, and when we talk about student safety, we're talking about more than locks on doors and the type of glass we use and the different drills and procedures we have. It is our obligation to provide students with a safe and supportive learning environment, and this means all forms of safety. We provide students with medical attention when necessary, counseling and therapy services, family support and education, and critical to this process is a supportive to foster supportive relationships and a safe academic environment for students. When students experience comprehensive supports, it works to mitigate problems or struggles that they may have and to help achieve or help to promote the likelihood that students will be successful in school. The national surveillance statistics on students with mental health issues is alarming. It is estimated that in each classroom across the nation, there are 5 students who are struggling with some form of mental illness, and 1 student who is suffering from severe abuse. The things that we most commonly see in schools when we're talking about mental illness have to do with things like autistic spectrum disorders, attention deficit hyperactivity disorders, mood disorders such as depression or anxiety, PTSD, and the like. Schools must support these mental health needs of students for kids to be successful to face the obstacles that they encounter in life. Thinking about student safety, we can look at it through 3 different dimensions. One being first the physical safety of students, protecting their physical health and well-being. We can talk about their emotional safety, and we can talk about the cognitive safety. And so I'm going to go through some examples of what the pupil services staff are doing to support students in all 3 realms. First, in thinking about physical safety, the district takes great strides in trying to protect students and their health and well-being while they're here at school. The health needs of students have been increasing over time, and our school nurses are charged in large part with helping to protect the physical well-being of our students. So I have some virtual participation of our pupil services people to talk about the things that they're doing. And they thanked me for the opportunity to be videotaped. So here we go. Oops, nope, that didn't work. Let me go back. Oops.
So we are currently working on bringing in a system where we'll be able to document medication administration in Power School. So having information accessible to us electronically about when we give medications. This is huge. There's tons of literature that shows that there are safeties that we can build into our system that will help make sure that we're preventing medication-related errors as often as possible. And the system will be able to give the district nurses, myself and Lori, some real-time information on when students received medication so that we can communicate better with families and providers about what we're doing here to manage health needs.
So we do emergency response team training at all of our buildings, including district office, to ensure that staff in all buildings are ready for any sort of medical emergency that might come up for students or staff. Specific needs that we tailor the education towards. We talk about how we would react for a student who is having a diabetic emergency or a student who is having a cardiac emergency. So we really meet with those emergency response teams to make sure that they have a comfort level with some of the specific medical emergencies that they may face in their buildings. So some of the things that we do training on are automatic epinephrine injectors. We have what is an EpiPen trainer here and an AviQ trainer here. So we will demonstrate with staff how to use these devices, and it is great that we can utilize the trainers here so they can actually practice. This is a practice EpiPen, so we can talk through how we would say, here's our blue safety cap, pull that off, and then we can go ahead and administer right in the leg. So we would talk through with our teams how to use these devices with the training materials we have. And I think it's absolutely essential that we can have hands-on practice for our teams so they would know how to use it in the event of a real emergency. Additionally, we have practice glucagon, which is for a diabetic emergency. So we can walk through staff utilizing this, how we would mix it, using our demonstration here, we also are able to utilize from parents who share with us their expired medications, that we can actually practice with that as well as our trainer devices. We have, additionally, for seizure rescue medication, we have Diastat. It's a rectal medication that we would use for some of our students who have seizure disorders. One thing we very commonly see in the schools are students with asthma. So it is fantastic for us to walk through how to use an inhaler and a spacer and demonstrate that so everybody can help those students safely use their inhalers. One thing that we hope not to be using very often in schools but are essential to have are AEDs. So this is an AED trainer that we utilize in our CPR, AED, and first aid classes. And this, it will start talking when I open it, but I'll show you what it looks like. So we use this with staff, just so they can absolutely see what the real thing looks like. They're exactly the same. As I said, we'll start talking to you. So we can do hands-on demonstration. I'll close it so it doesn't keep talking. But we can run through scenarios with mannequins to practice different situations that they may see in the school setting.
To get this back on present. Okay, well, I'll do it this way. Okay, so another thing that we have started this year in the district is we took a look at our current child protection student lessons that we were using. These programs are designed to help students identify and learn to report abuse. So we've adopted a new curriculum. We're using the Second Step curriculum currently. And these are classroom lessons that have a component related to it that are also shared with parents, so parents can help emphasize these lessons at home and engage in discussions with their students. The purpose is for students to recognize, refuse, and report unsafe or abusive situations. In regard to emotional safety for our students, we take steps to help students manage feelings, practice empathy, and manage conflict productively. So not knowing that what Country Dale was doing, this is Catherine Reed that they had referred to, and she's talking about some of the work that she did with Country Dale. So I will just summarize some of the things that she says in this video, where she talks about, we do have a comprehensive bullying prevention program that runs from grades, we have specific lessons in grades 5 and 6. It's an online program, and it feeds up into programming within the middle school. And then she helps to support schools who want to do, larger school-wide programmatic things. Bullying is a huge issue. It's considered to be a public health problem and really a form of youth violence. And so we take this very seriously. We have a lot of policies and practices around reporting bullying and steps to mitigate that type of behavior. It does cause, physical and emotional harm to students who are victims of bullying. So to raise awareness of what it is and how to report it and take proactive steps to build community is really important. So, in today's environment of increasingly demanding jobs, nothing could be more important to foster than to promote competence and self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. some people call it empathy, discipline, collaborative problem solving, character education, whatever you call it. What we're really talking about are teaching students the knowledge and skills and habits that they need to successfully navigate them through society in both the school environment and in the home and in communities. These skills provide the glue of a functioning society and a robust economy and a vibrant democracy. So one of the things that we've been doing this year is to engage in a year of study around our current practices that we use to engage students in lessons and instruction around social and emotional issues. So we've been gathering information from stakeholders throughout the district. We began with an exhaustive review of our district's data. This was done by the school counseling team, and they looked at things such, and the school counseling team along with school psychologists and our school social workers, and they looked at achievement data, discipline data, surveys, a variety of different pieces of evidence. And using this to help define the current state of social emotional learning in our district and to identify potential needs or gaps. What you see pictured here are focus groups. We did focus groups around the district. We finished our last one this morning, and we asked teachers to participate in voluntarily in our focus groups. We've had over 100 teachers volunteer to do this, so there's great interest throughout our school community. We ask them to respond to questions regarding what do you see as priorities in your classroom, what do you see as student needs, trends, and we've been gathering that information for further review. In addition to this, our school principals were provided with an overview of social emotional learning and given opportunities to provide information through surveys. We are also doing a district-wide review of our PBIS program. We brought in some individuals from CISA 1 who are helping investigate our current PBIS program. That's positive behavior interventions and supports. We have it implemented in all of our schools, and they're helping to define what's working, what's not, and to help direct us toward future needs. We've also conducted a district-wide school mental health needs assessment. So school teams could assess school needs and priorities for strengthening our current practices. So far, what we have learned is that building administrators, teachers, and our support staff firmly believe that social and emotional competencies are teachable. And they know that young people that are equipped with these skills will be better students and better adults in the future. And so we feel a very strong commitment to further investigation, and I hope to be able to report more once we've had a chance to look at all of our data. One additional thing I'd like to talk to you about is our crisis prevention program. So throughout the district, we have school teams that are trained in a process called nonviolent crisis intervention and prevention. And we have multiple people in each building. So we have educational assistants, teachers, our building administrators. We've trained kids club supervisors on ways to de-escalate student behaviors. So if we have a student who is showing unsafe behaviors, these individuals are called to respond to the crisis situation and hopefully de-escalate it. What you see pictured is in the event that a student is unsafe, school districts have the right to use and responsibility to help protect student safety. And so what you see is that they are, and this is only if a student shows signs that they are in imminent danger of risking their own personal safety or the safety of others. Staff are trained to do this maneuver safely, to get the student into a safe position. And this is part of the training. They also train staff to match the behavior with the best response to help hopefully de-escalate, to take steps to avoid unintentionally escalating a crisis situation, and how to stabilize. Increasingly important, though, is that they also learn the concept of rational detachment, which means to not take the behavior that a student exhibits personally. And so they do debriefing after incidents where physical restraint or de-escalation strategies are utilized. In terms of cognitive safety, this speaks about managing how and what we think and treating new ideas with respect, making decisions collaboratively and productively. You heard this mentioned earlier, and I want to show you just a brief video that was actually part of a mini documentary done by one of our high school students on restorative practices. When you think about restorative practices, I think a lot of people associate it with the criminal justice system and alternatives to prosecution. But really, the use of restorative practices or circles predate the use in the justice system. The circle process used by non-native people today is rooted in talking circles that were used by indigenous people years ago. What you see pictured is several of our school administrators and pupil services staff have requested some additional training on restorative practices, and we brought them together to practice strategies and techniques for the purpose of really building better classroom communities. So right now, the way restorative is used in our district, it's not used in place of discipline, but as an adjunct to traditional discipline practices. So schools will have peacemaking circles or check-in circles, morning meetings, and at times where harm has been done, restorative circles involving 2 students, multiple students, sometimes engaging families. So I'll share with you a little clip from this video.
The win at the SEC Conference Meet. Great work. Congratulations to those who participated in the Job Olympics at Arrowhead High School with 16 school districts. Another amazing win for the forensics team.
So restorative practices are used really to build relationships. They can be proactive. You can have students circling up to discuss any number of topics. But the idea of restoring something is usually referencing like the restoration of a relationship. So at times in the school, we'll use restorative practices specifically to engage 2 individuals, maybe 4, maybe even others, family members, if that's appropriate. When there's been some damage to a relationship, then we have a deliberate conversation to restore that relationship. So they can be used really in a number of ways to engage, to discuss, to build relationships, to rebuild relationships, to repair relationships. It all boils down really to deliberate communication with either 2 individuals, small group, or an even larger group.
So I became interested in doing restorative circles in my class because I was actually asked to do this by the administration to go to sort of field trip, if you will, for teachers where I got to learn about restorative practices. I think they chose me just because I try to do new things in my classroom and I try and make all my kids feel very comfortable. So after going to that, I really realized that for me, restorative practices in general fit my lifestyle. It's more about forgiving other people and working on a solution together and moving forward versus, one of the ways you might see it in high school is a kid getting in trouble and getting suspended. But this is a different approach. It's more an approach where you can have the kids learn from their mistakes and truly understand what they've done wrong and feel what they've done wrong so that moving forward they can understand what not to do in the future. And for me, that just resonated a lot more deeply. And so after that, I was like, I'm putting this in my classroom. It's great.
So restorative practices, I guess, the way that we look at it is twofold. The first piece is really to build community, to help students form relationships, build trust among each other and get to know each other. But then it's also a way restorative practices can be used to respond to challenging behavior. So when there are difficulties or issues between two students, it's a way to respond to that. And it also gives students a framework then to be able to repair harm between them. So if there's something happened when people are affected, they're able to repair that relationship.
So just as a teacher and then an administrator, like I think at the backbone of everything we do, if we want to achieve success, the relationship piece is really at the heart of it. So as a classroom teacher, it's important for teachers to build relationships with students. As an administrator, it's important for us to have relationships with families, students, staff, community members. So knowing that there's a deliberate way to build and repair relationships, that's kind of why I was interested in restorative practices when I had the opportunity to go to a training. You know, I was really happy to be able to have that opportunity and to learn more about just how to better build relationships.
A healthy, safe, and supportive learning environment enables students, adults, and even the school as a system to learn in powerful ways. Such an environment promotes innovation, inquiry, and risk-taking. Moreover, such an environment reinforces and enhances the leadership.
I bring that close, like what happened.
Supports the leadership capacity in the school because competent, excellent, and dedicated educators want to work under such conditions. I'm proud of the work that the Pupil Services team has done this year and the efforts that they have done to make Franklin a better place to work, a better place to learn, and a better community. So thank you very much.
Any comments, or do you take me?
Yes.
Are you familiar with mental health first aid?
Yeah, some schools are engaging in that right now. There have been some pieces of funding. I have looked into it, and I think we're considering that as an option. It really is training laypersons around the issues of student mental health. So there's great value in that.
And really, it's also after, first aid, physical first aid, it's just mental health first aid, and it's, I hope it, is there a way to spread it within the community, and not just in the school, but families could be involved.
Is there a psychologist in every building?
Yes. Yes, we have a full-time school psychologist in each building. In addition to, we have 4 counselors, school counselors at the high school, 2 at the middle school, in a system or district-wide position, in addition to 2 social workers.
And I know we have over 500 staff members, but is everyone required to be certified or trained in CPR or AED usage?
We have emergency response teams in each building that are trained, and they include a wide range of people from school office staff, teachers, our custodial staff, our head custodians are often trained, and that is done annually. So we have a team of people in each building. So it's not each individual, but an entire response team.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you. Okay, next is 9C, the District Administrator Annual Goals and Performance Standards. Dr. Miller.
I had provided to you in advance a summary or an update of the goals that I've set for myself personally and for our district. And given I just had discussed these with you at the end of January, I thought a written report would work well at this point, and then I would answer any questions you might have about it.
Just one question
Kelsey?
on, under, I think it's the last page where you talked about attending the once-a-month meeting with administrators from Greenfield, Greendale, and Whitnall. What's on the agenda, or who sets the agenda? What kind of items are?
We collaborate on the agenda. One of the things we've been talking about is doing some joint trainings across the district for our support staff. So collaborating to perhaps share our resources is one of the things we've talked about. We have a variety of topics. We talk about school safety in our schools most recently when we get together. So those would be a couple examples. It's really a brief meeting. It's about an hour long. It's a breakfast meeting.
On page 2, for the district goal number 2, for increasing trust, after School Perceptions does the survey again, and realizing that how important climate is in the district, and that even outside things can affect that climate, you know, even legislative issues and things like that. What are your next steps? Do you have any yet next steps after that?
So we have baseline information from the survey last May. So we're keeping the questions similar, very, very similar, so that we can see measurably what's changed. The next steps would be obviously to continue to set goals around what the data tells us and perhaps refine the survey to get better information that will help us be more informed about improving the school culture.
And then on the third goal, district goal, you talked about increasing engagement and community partnerships. And what do you envision as the engagement part of it? You know, we know what the partnerships are, but
so you mean engagement with people outside the community?
Is that what that was? Was it community? Or
so these partnerships are related to our students and their interaction with the business community through internships and youth apprenticeships and job shadowing. So as part of our coherence plan, however, we are going to be setting some goals around engagement with our community and what that would look like. Goals and strategies, if you will, to increase that.
any other questions?
Regarding district goal number 1, which is relating to all schools will meet goals within their school improvement plan, we all had the chance to walk around at a previous meeting and talk with each building administrator and see their goals. I think it was communicated previously, but I think it's important to ensure that there's follow-up on the actions that each building principal stated that they were going to try to achieve, whether that was based on student achievement concerns, on closing certain gaps. For example, I think I specifically remember Ben Franklin wanted to specifically close gaps in the achievement from grade to grade, I think was one of the goals. However, for the board's benefit to receive an update at the building level, because of that interaction with each building principal regarding the school improvement plan, I think is necessary, just to ensure visibility at the board level that those buildings are either addressing their concerns, and whether they've met or not met those goals, I think is important, at least to communicate that goal moving forward. And regarding the second goal about district level trust and engagement, from my experience and interaction, I think that there's been positive movement in that space. But I think specifically relating to some of the projects that are ongoing, including the communication study with the HR team, as well as, I think your presence in the buildings is 100% related to the visibility that maybe was lacking under previous administration. So I think in moving forward to ensure that district goal number 2 has some positive traction, that level is maintained, that there's actual action and a plan that's produced from the communication study, and then solely based on the survey, that And I think in past years, those results have been public, or at least been visible and presented, at least from you to the board level. But I think those three areas are essential to ensure that that transparency is consistent.
Okay, thank you for your feedback.
Any other comments?
So just to be clear, then you're going to come back with data once it's available? or-
Correct, right. Now, keep in mind, our standardized test data doesn't come back till fall.
Correct.
So, but definitely data around the school perceptions survey, and much more data around the professional practice rubric that you're holding me accountable for. So that will be a much more thorough presentation, providing you evidence of my progress in those areas. Yes, that will happen.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, item 9D is the board self-evaluation discussion. And Megan put together the pie chart and then the responses. She received responses from the administration and 6 board members. So that's what we have in front of us. What we are accustomed to doing is just briefly going over this and then using some of this information at a board retreat to formulate our goals for next year. So I assume that's what we want to do this year, just briefly go over these results. And just, if anyone has any comments on each area, is that what we want to do? And we'll take them from the administration if you want to give any also. So Area 1 was Standard 1 governance, and then it was 71.43% said we met the goal. And in looking under the responses, areas the board could focus on to improve governance, are there any comments on any of those responses? The comment number 2, where it said establish goals with measures, I had a question on that, if anyone wants to comment on it. We do have goals with measures because we set the 2 goals this year, so I didn't quite understand that comment. So we have the goal on visiting the schools, and we have the goal on our policies. So I looked over the policies, and I think we are going to be able to meet that goal by the end of the school year. And as far as visiting the schools, we've had reports from the board members on their visits. I can't tell you if we've all made all visits yet, but we still have the end of the school year to do it. So you can still give reports. I know I met my goal. I think Linda, have you met your goal? Larry, I think you've met your goal. You all have to say whether, Jeff, I think you met your goal.
Yeah, no, one more.
Okay, so you still can visit another school by June to meet your goal.
And that wasn't much of a stretch. I think we should all really try and make sure we do that.
Yeah. I think it's been a real positive experience, at least for me, and I've enjoyed hearing other reports. And on 3, progress monitoring of goal areas during regular Board of Education meetings. Again, I brought this back in December. Does the board want, is the board talking about our goals or the district goals? Does anyone want to speak to that, or? I don't know how many times we'd want to bring our goal back. Any comments?
What do they mean?
I think the 2 comments that I have a comment for are the board should be careful in micromanaging individual department budgets after budget approval. I agree with the comment, but I also think in the budget cycle upcoming, and a suggestion for each of the department heads is potentially we break out the department budgets in a different way, including subcategories of salaries, benefits as it's listed, but we list out department budgets for projects and ancillary T&L or whatever it is, rather than a single line budget item. And I know that there are subcategories, but I think, as we discussed in previous board meetings, the issue with some of the discussion was around how those budgets are managed or what's allocated within those budgets. And I get that there has to be a planning process, and there should be, but I think at least in terms of the early on discussion process, it might help in terms of visibility at the board level. And then secondly, we do not discuss potential agenda items, that there is no visibility to those discussions or potential topics, was a direct comment made by myself. And I think it's something that if there are community concerns, if we're emailed individually, I think that there should be a process in discussing with you, Janet or Dr. Miller, about including items in the agenda prior to that being released on the Friday or Monday prior to a board. I know we can amend an agenda at certain times. However, we have to provide public notice in certain instances. And I think that there should be some sort of draft list, some sort of process of email me if you have specific items. I don't know what that process is.
Yeah, we have a handbook that has the process of how this works, and it.
I understand, and I understand that there's a discussion beforehand, but you set the agenda with Dr. Miller. And if you don't like something that I would suggest, for example, which has never occurred, you would potentially have the power to say, we're not going to include that on the agenda. And whether right or wrong, I think that there should be some visibility as to what topics may be discussed or may not be discussed, or we're going to push those off for later meetings. I think that's one thing, I guess, if I look back specifically in the last 3 years, that I really had no visibility to. And we've suggested certain topics, I think, in board meetings for the next meeting or 2 meetings ahead, and whether or not those actions have actually been included in the agenda, I think you could go back and look that there have been cases where those items have not been included and instances where they have. But I think we have a lot of experience with members of the community emailing, calling, reaching out about certain agenda items. And for example, one was the class sizes that we added to an agenda item upcoming. I think there needs to be potentially more transparency with what those agenda items might be or might not be.
I'm not quite sure exactly what you're talking about, because even you wanted an agenda item, and I right away discussed it with Dr. Miller. I mean,
I understand
when
that,
someone wants an agenda item, we have future agenda items, and you bring it up, and we have a formula as to how we do it.
But I'm not aware of that until it's released, that maybe potentially when Board Docs is updated the Monday before a Wednesday meeting. And if Tim, for example, has.
That's not your job to be aware of it, because we have.
It is my job to be aware of it. It may not be my job to manage
be
it.
aware of it.
It's 100% my job to be aware of what's on the agenda. It might not be my job to manage that agenda, but it is my job to be aware of it.
At the meeting it is, when you approve the agenda.
I have to prepare for a meeting, and 2 days prior to the meeting, knowing what an agenda item is, I do not think that's ample time.
You know what the main future agenda items are going to be.
Potentially, if it's listed. If it's listed as, for example, on our list, A through D for a future agenda item. If it's something that's discussed, if I email you separately on a Thursday saying, hey, let's talk about class sizes, let's add it to the next agenda item, and you agree with that and add it to the agenda, no one else knows that that's an agenda item until that Monday.
The agenda comes up before for Monday, for a Wednesday meeting?
But that probably isn't going to happen.
But I'm saying whether or not it does or doesn't, that process, I think, has to potentially change. For the last 3 years, I can maybe name 1 or 2 instances that I remember that there was an agenda item that no one knew was going to come up until the Board Docs was updated. And I think that's wrong. I think that there should be some transparency in how those agenda items are discussed.
Well, I think that happens more often than that. I mean, I've had plenty of instances where there's an agenda meeting, and then something comes up that the superintendent and the president talk about that ends up on the agenda, and we see the agenda that comes out. That's the first time we know about it, it's coming out. That's, the president sets the agenda with the administrator.
I understand
My
that,
point with the
and I
future
think that there
agenda
should be
items
some transparency.
is that the board decides as a group what's going to be on future agenda items. You know, and so if somebody wants to bring something up, that's something that can be brought up. But it's not just any one particular member dictating what's going to be on the schedule. So I think that's where we have a discussion, say, is this something we want to talk about?
The superintendent basically brings forward the school side of, the district side of the agenda, unless we, as a board here, really want to have something on our end on the agenda, which we should really be discussing at future agenda items.
I totally agree with that.
Yes.
That if it's
That-
potentially not discussed in a future agenda item, that it may not be included in the agenda for that next meeting.
Right, that is how, that's why at future agenda items, we might discuss it, and then if we don't agree, if we don't agree on it, we can have a vote.
Right.
Yes.
Then I think that policy should be
It's in our handbook.
correct, and I think it should be, for lack of a better term, more strictly adhered to, in terms, if it's not listed, for example, the next meeting or 2 meetings in the future agenda items, and it's potentially added without it being listed, that it's at least communicated prior to the agenda being released.
Well, you're tying the hands of the work of the district
Then
administrator.
I'm saying that there at least needs to be some sort of notice or communication, rather than just the agenda coming up with an item that maybe has not been discussed prior to that meeting.
I guess that would be up to the board to decide that, because
I think
I don't agree with
I think
that.
what would be more fair, Jeff, is if something comes up in that short a time frame, that maybe we asked that it not be an action item if it doesn't have to be, whereas it comes up for discussion to talk about it and vet it, and then maybe not be asked to vote on something right away.
Right.
I've had that happen too.
I
where
agree with
sometimes it's
that
like,
as well.
I wish I had a little more time to think about it, but I think to have you maybe say that if it's not on the future agenda item for our next meeting that's 2 weeks from now, that would preclude it from being put on the agenda, I truly believe is unreasonable.
Dr. Miller, do you have an opinion on anything there? Because there are things we purposely don't put on future agenda items because it's so minuscule and.
So I guess an example of a concern is if there's an agenda item that I would like to maybe have a conversation with a district administrator, or reach out to a building administrator and try to have a one-on-one contact or a discussion, it gives me basically from Thursday, Friday, the week prior, maybe the Monday before, to set up a meeting. And frankly, with work, it's a lot of times not going to happen. And so if I'm going to say I'm going to come to a meeting being fully prepared for that agenda item or discussion, it does not give me, and I would assume it doesn't give many of you, ample opportunity to set up a discussion or be prepared for the agenda item. And whether it's an action item or just a general informational item, I think that there's an issue with whether or not that lead time for an item that was not discussed or just added to the agenda without any type of prior notice. And that's my only concern. And I think, with that being said, it's the way that you've been receptive with adding agenda items. I'm not saying that you haven't been receptive or anything. I'm saying for agenda items that we've not been aware of, that have been added to the agenda as it's been released, it does not provide ample time.
Can you give an example of one or two? I'm not aware of what you're talking about.
I mean, I know the Pupil Services report that Ms. Freeman presented was listed as a future agenda item. But for an example, regarding the safety report, there have been developments maybe this last week that Dr. Miller had provided in a weekly update. I don't have a hard example because obviously I made this comment back on the 25th of March. But if there's an agenda item that does not provide me ample time to say to Ms. Ellihausen, let's meet so we can discuss a third Friday count or the student class number participation policy, I need to ensure that I'm prepared. And I think my comments are solely based on whether or not an agenda item that's released without any prior notice of what the agenda might be provides me ample time.
I would ask you, though, why you would feel that you would have to go seek your information yourself.
Why wouldn't I?
When they're coming to the board with the information. They should There should be, they should be providing the information to all board members.
But in an instance where there's an action item, for example, if I'm receiving the information that day and had no time to do my own research, to prepare, to do whatever, I feel like to get the information that day and expect a decision is, in some cases, unreasonable.
I think we made the statement that that is probably, we all
Right.
agree with that. Don't add an item when they expect us to vote on
Well,
it.
we also have a approval of the agenda. If there's something that comes up that is something where is maybe a big item to discuss that may be down as an action item that you're like, well, I don't know if we're gonna be able to do that, we always have the ability to remove something from the agenda.
So are you suggesting that on the future agenda items, it has every single agenda item at the next meeting listed? Is that what you're suggesting?
Or it's on the agenda when it's released on Friday.
Correct.
I mean, this time we had the addition of the,
Correct.
not
correct.
that, that
Right.
was horrible, but that's the kind of stuff that happens.
Yeah, it does, but not frequently, but that did occur. But what I'm asking is, Mr. Lewis, are you suggesting that on the bottom of this current agenda, it have every single agenda item that we will be discussing on April 25th?
No.
Okay.
I think if you had a draft agenda, for example, knowing that next meeting on April 25th would include these three items, but it might also include three other items that we've discussed at previous board meetings or that you have a potential of bringing up, that there's a draft agenda or some sort of document or listing of something that I can reference, saying, okay, I know, rather than just this future agenda item, number 12 listing A, B, and C being on April 25th, there's also 4 other agenda points.
You want to do our job.
No,
would they know?
I'm saying that have visibility to what the future agenda might be.
You do have a rubric of, like a calendar of all
Right,
the
right,
year,
right, right.
everything for the year that she could put out for the entire board.
But it is somewhat fluid.
100
you know?
100%.
The policies, for example, sometimes they're ready, sometimes they're not, because of the need to weigh in with legal counsel. So, you know, it just can't have our hands tied in terms of
Totally agree.
adding something to the agenda or removing something based on our ability to prepare properly for the board.
Totally agree.
So, and frankly, you know, we do work very hard to make sure you have that agenda on Friday, and every person at this table that I work with will answer an email on the weekend, take a phone call, so I understand a busy lifestyle, but there are four full days before you have to address an agenda item that you can contact any one of us. So, and we will respond, and I would say that there probably hasn't been an instance where we haven't. So, I believe we need to have some flexibility, we need to foreshadow the important things, but I need some flexibility.
100%. But to slap a draft across this and have it out there so I could potentially see next meeting, these are the agenda points, knowing that it is fluid until the Friday before, when the agenda is actually set, at least allows me the opportunity, and whether or not we know in advance that there may be parents discussing recess time, or something that would allow someone the time to prepare and potentially ask questions to the administrators, rather than sitting here and Googling during presentations or other means, I think would help each and every one of you, and it would have helped in the past 3 years, to say that I know what's upcoming and can prepare myself for that meeting.
So, you know, I communicate weekly with the board, so it would be very easy for me to communicate
Absolutely.
in that manner in which, oh, the agenda is going to change a bit, or we might be adding this. It'd be very easy for me to do that without physically giving you a draft of the
100%.
agenda.
I think that's a
I think that
great option.
if that's a desire of the board, I'd be happy to communicate, you know, this is essentially what the agenda will look like, but, you know.
I don't know that, I mean, for me personally, I mean, you can certainly send that if you want, but I'm not going to seek out opinions and have conversations with administrators on something that we may or may not be discussing. You know, I want to know what it is we're discussing before I have to seek out those opinions. And so I think if you get something on, like, first of all, I don't know when you'd like to have this document, but let's say you want it next week, there might be a couple things on there that we're not even going to talk about. So now I'm going to take my time to call these people to see what's going on when that's not even going to be on the next agenda. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's two sides to everything. I understand what you're saying, but I think, they set the agenda, and it's usually on that Friday.
Can I ask one? Because this agenda had your report, but there was no report shared prior, right? Sometimes there is a report shared prior, and sometimes it shows up between when it's posted and when we have it. That's an area where sometimes I feel unprepared because there's a report, I don't know what's going to be in it, but here we are. And that might be helpful to know if there's going to be a report, there will be a report in advance, or, because then I keep checking back. Is it going to come in there? Is it going to happen? Or if you just said it'll be,
Presentation.
That's a good.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
I got it.
Agreed.
Any other comments on Area 1? And Area 2, establishing expectations. So that was almost 86% said the standard was met. Any comments on the responses?
I think the comment that I put down was the board maintained focus on student achievement by supporting administration when they tasked the building principals with devising a game plan to achieve higher student results. I think that's something that is trackable, and we'll be able to go back and look at that, and they established good expectations, I felt. And then we maintained our focus on that expectation.
I don't know who made quote, response number 7, but I think it's effective to see administration put a focus on literacy, reading and writing, and then reinforce that focus in the school presentations that are made, specifically the Forest Park presentation, and I believe the Southwood Glen or Pleasant View presentation, one of them. Both.
And Robinwood.
All of them, as that was a focus, right? But I think it's positive and a good reinforcement to continue to see that focus.
Any other comments? And standard 3, accountability, 71.4%. Said the standard was met. Any comments on the responses? I don't know if that no is a positive or a negative.
Yeah.
No response.
Okay.
Please explain.
You
can't go on unless you type something in there.
I know.
You're the best.
Again, I think the presentations, number 7, from the schools or from individual successes, I think is important, and it should continue.
Yeah, I don't think that was my comment on the coherence planning, but I think that is going to have a good effect on the standard, but where's my comment? Oh, my comment was number 5. Yeah, I just think some changes that are made quickly without parents knowing, can sometimes cause anxiety if they don't have enough notice. And I just think sometimes the parents need to know a little sooner, if possible. responsiveness. 85.7 said we met that standard. Yeah. Any comments?
Only on number 3 that you really do a great job responding to the emails that we get.
Thank you. And Mr. Lewis, you brought up a comment about emails before. I don't know how many board members get emails or respond on their own, which is perfectly great. You should respond if you feel you want to, but I think it'd be helpful if you get emails, if you do respond, if you would share with the rest of the board. That's how
But we can't respond?
No, you can respond to your own emails if you
Oh,
want.
but, and copy in everybody? Because you've always said that's a walking quorum. We have to
No,
be
if
careful
you're
of that.
responding to a constituent, just like I share my responses, because I'm responding on behalf of the board, but if you're comfortable to share your response, if you're comfortable to share it, it's helpful to the rest of the board. No,
I've held back because of the thought of a walking quorum.
no, that's not a walking quorum.
It's only if you send something to the board and looking for a
Back and
reply.
forth, back and
Yeah,
forth.
yeah, for an answer.
And to the superintendent, so that we know the issue going on, so that we, but if you're not comfortable, then you don't have to.
No, I just
Yeah.
held back.
And then standard 5 engagement, again, 71.43%. Believe we met the standard.
I'd like to think that number 2 or number 4 was one of my responses, because I think it was, but.
4 was mine, so.
One of them about attending more, or maybe it was 6, I don't know. But in order to achieve that goal of being visible at more events, and I know you've done a really good job with your weekly summaries, Dr. Miller, but specifically, I know for the schools that I'm or Forest Park this year and Ben Franklin in the past, I'd asked to be included more on some of those school emails about concerts or science fairs, whatever. But I think it's still an area for improvement. One, I may not have visibility to Southwood Glen Science Fair versus Pleasant Views if I'm only a liaison for Ben Franklin. So I think that area of having more visibility to those in-school activities is necessary to make sure that that visibility is present.
I know that parents have access to lots of communication, but if you're not a parent, can we have access to some of those? Or I don't know if I want to see it. I'm curious what that looks like.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, that if you're a liaison to a school, that they should remember you're a liaison and make sure you're seeing some of those things. Yeah.
Just like any parent does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you make that happen?
I can certainly convey that to the building principals, who will convey it to the building secretaries, who will then make sure that you're a little bit more in the loop with what's going on at that school.
I mean, I look at newsletters and things, but I'm sure there's a lot of other stuff that
Yeah.
goes out there.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good suggestion.
There were 3 comments in that same vein. 10 more school events, more school functions, more district events, so, yeah.
And that's typical every year on that topic. And then there's another whole page of responses. And then, again, there's really no media coverage anymore from the now newspapers.
Yeah, I think in that vein, the district and whoever manages those communications, I think needs to be proactive in celebrating the successes. And currently we are, I think, on Facebook and Twitter, the feeds are active, but, again, from whatever we find out from the communication study, that those are actually implemented with with the plan.
Well, I think we'll be able to use this towards at least one goal, if not two. We'll see, because we don't have to make our goals totally from this, but, so we'll have to talk soon about a retreat date. And
I think we should try and get 100% feedback from the board for the survey before making our goals. I think that needs to happen, so
it's part of board policy.
Before we can set what our goals are going to be and our retreat agenda and whatever, we need to make sure we get everyone's feedback.
We'll work on that. Okay, thank you. Item 10 is school board liaison reports. We have 10A, personnel and policy 6713, assistive technology. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. So 6713 was on our list to review, not only because there had been updates via legislative action, but because this policy was last seen and reviewed in 2005. So as you can see, the policy was substantially redlined, meaning the old language was stricken and new language added. Specifically, I think if you read through the policy, mirrors the most recent updated and edited policies that we've put forth in terms of relevant language, how the district is referred to, as well as mirroring certain statutory requirements.
I would add, if you have any questions about this, it is managed through the Pupil Services Department, and Ms. Preman could perhaps provide more information.
I think it's a pretty straightforward policy, but,
So with that, I'll make a motion to approve Board Policy 6713.
Second.
motion by Mr. Lewis, second by Mr. Gamble. Is there any discussion?
Just a question on the backside, just the backside. Case by case, consistent with legal requirements / district procedures? What are those district procedures?
Sure. So the first part of the policy addresses the response of the district for students with IEPs, and that is a legal requirement that we provide assistive technology to students, but we are also required by law to provide assistive technology for students identified with disabilities under Section 504, which is different from an IEP. So a student is found to have a disability in some area without an IEP. So a team gathers and makes recommendations. So an example of that might be a student with a physical disability that doesn't require specialized instruction, but they may need some tools to access their education. They would provide the appropriate assistive technology. Another example would be students such as, right now we have several students that are English language learners that have a difficult time accessing print, so we're providing them with technology. So it might be audiobooks or things to access their school materials in another way.
Is it ever, so it can't be denied if a request is made, it can't be denied?
Well, it's a decision that is made by a group of individuals, so if the individuals feel that it's not necessary, it could potentially be denied. But these are collaborative decisions, either through an IEP team or a 504 team or a group of other individuals.
So if a device would enhance the experience but not be necessary, it would be denied? Because it could be something that's... Potentially. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those, oh,
I'm sorry, just one more. Because it does say children living in poverty, so we're not like providing internet service to children that can't afford it? I mean, I would have to argue that might be...
Now, when we're thinking of assistive technologies, we are typically talking about tools that would allow them access to their education within the school setting. So as an example, the type of tools we use, audiobooks, adapted keyboards for students with visual impairments or physical impairments. We're not addressing things at home unless a student is found to have a disability, and in order to access their education, it's something that would be required. That would be.
But the policy says children living in poverty, so it's not really regarding disability, it's regarding the inability to access.
Correct. We have a legal requirement for students with disabilities. In addition to that, we can consider as a district technologies that may be needed to help a student access their education.
Considered.
Consider.
Okay.
No legal requirement to do so.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you. Sure. Sorry.
We have a motion by Mr. Lewis, second by Mr. Gamble. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Can I say one thing before we move on?
Sure.
Jeff, you've been on this, you've been the liaison for policy the last 2 years, and I just want you to know you've gotten through a lot of work, you've done a lot of work, got through a lot of policies, closed the gap in a lot of areas. I want to thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
I know you put a lot of time in on it.
I'll second that.
We've done a lot,
Is it seconded? Oh, yeah.
there's still a lot to get through. I think if we look at the policy book, there's still consolidation or simplification that can happen. And I think looking at each one of these, specifically where you see a lot of red lines on previously approved policies, I think it just proves that, from 2005 to now, there's been a lot of change in terms of some of the legislative requirements. And it'd be fantastic to get to a spot where we can say within 7-8 years that we've cycled through the whole book. And whether or not we'll get there, I think there's a lot of work to be done. But, I'd love to see that rather than 13, 16, 18 years that policies go untouched.
I think that's too long also. 7, 8 years is too long. We'll see.
Okay. Thank you. Item 10B, board liaison reports. Do we have any reports? All right. 10C, school visits. Item 11, school board debriefing. Any comments?
I'll just say as a final comment, I think over the past 3 years, we made a ton of improvement that I've seen firsthand, and being in the schools, it's refreshing to see, as Dr. Miller frames her goals in the district mantra of better place to work, better place to learn, and better community. I think, we can always continue to improve, whether that's something that we view as stagnant or something that we view as a constant process review, but actually putting eyes on whatever it is, whatever we're focusing on, I think is a positive thing. And we've done, like I said, a lot of work, but there's still a lot to be done. So I'm looking forward to hearing what comes from a lot of the committees and everything that's moving right now. And just because I'm not here doesn't mean I'm not paying attention. So, I appreciate all of your involvement.
Unless you're a threat.
Maybe both, I don't know. But I know some of the new member coming in will have his hands full, but at the same time, I think will be a good fit with the board. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, item 12, future agenda items. New early college credit and start college now approvals, April 25th. Academic and technical excellence scholarship approvals, April 25th. The National School Board Association Conference Report, April 25th. Community Education and Recreation Department Report and Sabre Center update, May 9th. And there's also going to be a forensics presentation from the high school on April 25th. I just am waiting for a confirmation back from the high school, so that will be April 25th. Anything else? All right. And then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Mr. Lewis.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Lewis, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Witkowski. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned at 8:09.